Hi everyone and welcome back to Newegg TV. My name is Paul and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview and some benchmarks on this NVIDIA GeForce GTX 670 graphics card. This particular version is MSI's overclocked version of the GeForce GTX 670. And whenever a new GPU comes out, there's always a few different versions of it at least. You'll have what is known as the reference design, which typically comes from the GPU manufacturer. In this case that would be NVIDIA. And then also you'll have custom designs that come out from specific manufacturers, and then you also might have overclocked editions. This particular card, MSI's version of the GTX 670 that we have, is the reference design as far as the PCB and the cooler, but it is an overclocked version, so they have upped the stock specs of for instance, the GPU frequency as well as the memory. So we'll be getting into both the reference and the overclock specs in just a moment, but first off, some specs from the box. For instance, you get a 3-year warranty from MSI for this video card, if purchased within the USA, Canada, and Mexico, of course. Overclocked edition, again, we'll get back to that in a moment. You do get 2 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory, runs at 1500 megahertz, 6.0 gigabits per second. It's on a 256-bit memory interface, and you get 192 gigabytes per second of bandwidth available. This card is, of course, fully DirectX 11 compliant. You get a display port out as well as a few other outputs available. You do have the option, of course, with the included disk to install MSI Afterburner, which is a fantastic overclocking utility from MSI. Very easy to use, works with a huge range of video cards from lots of different manufacturers. And then for the construction, MSI has gone with solid capacitors to maintain the integrity and lifespan of the card. And now let's go ahead and see what else comes in the box. You get this piece of plastic right there. You get the video card itself, of course, which will remain mysterious for another moment or two. And you also get some accessories. They have included some power adapters for you. You need 2 6-pin PCI Express power connectors to power this card, so they've given you a couple adapters that will take a couple of your Molex plugs, convert them to 6-pin PCI Express plugs, make sure you can power the card. They have a display port to a VGA D-sub connector right there, which I hope you don't use because you should be using high quality digital displays if you're getting a video card like this, but you can use it if you have an older display you want to connect. You get a quick user's guide for installing the video card. You get the 670 GTX series specific graphics card manual right there from MSI. Then, of course, you get the MSI driver and installation disk. For purposes of our benchmarking today, since at the point we're benchmarking this card, it's not actually released to the public yet, we're using the drivers directly off of this disk, which I believe are 301.25. I could be wrong about that, though. Anyway, if you do get this card and this disk, don't use it. You should head over to the MSI website or the NVIDIA website to download the latest drivers, because they will give you speed improvements and also compatibility improvements with the games that you play. We're going to go right ahead with our closer up look of the card itself. So there you have it. Again, this is a reference design for the GTX 670, and one of the more unique things about this is on the back, right there. Look at how short the PCB is. It only goes up to right about there. The rest of it is all part of the cooling shroud as well as the blower style fan that you see. So the majority of the components on the card are actually over here, which means that the heatsink, which is underneath this black plastic piece of the shroud, is actually covering most of those. Now, because of the shorter PCB, they do have some of the NAND modules on the back there, so you will want to bear that in mind. Those might get a little bit hotter than the rest of the card. But for cooling in general, you have a blower-style fan down here at the end of the card. It's fully enclosed around the back side, as you can see, on all 3 sides there, so it's going to have positive pressure at this end of the card. It's going to push the air across and, generally speaking, exhaust out the back through this vent right here. Speaking of the back, since we're over here, we might as well go over our display outputs. You do get 4 of them. The card can power 3 displays right out of the box from a single card, which is very nice to have. You don't have to do a 2-card setup for that. You get a couple DVI connections right there. The upper one here is digital only. So bear in mind, if you are going to use that DVI to analog adapter, you need to use it with the bottom DVI connector right there. They're both dual link DVI outs, so they will support higher resolutions such as 2560 by 1600. You also get HDMI 1.4a out, as well as a DisplayPort 1.2 out right there. So next up, I wanted to do a quick measurement of this card to give you guys an idea of the length and if it will fit in your computer case, because that's always very important. For a card with this much power, it is not long at all. It's actually just a touch over 9.5 inches. So you can see down there, I'm going to call about 9 5/8 inches. Definitely, as long as you got about 9 3/4 inches of clearance, you should be fine. And the other thing I wanted to check, because I showed you guys the PCB, is how long the PCB is as compared to the rest of the card. And let me just try to prop it up here as delicately as I can. As you can see, PCB is shorter than 7 inches, so they've packed a lot of hardware, as you can see on the back of the PCB there where all the transistors and modules and everything are connected. A lot of hardware into a fairly short PCB. Of course, you get a smaller card overall for that, but also gives you a bit more effectiveness from the cooling solution. Now, I was mentioning length. Another benefit, actually, of the PCB being shorter is that the connectors, the power connectors, are actually down here rather than sticking out the end on this end, which adds more length to the card. So even if you're pretty short on space, since the power connectors are right here, it shouldn't conflict in most circumstances. Speaking of power, you need two 6-pin PCI Express power connectors to provide power to the card, along with the 75 watts that you get directly through the PCI Express bus. Speaking of PCI Express, again, here's your connector for that. It is PCI Express Gen 3 compatible. Gen 3 gives you increased, effectively about double the bandwidth available as compared to PCI Express Gen 2 or 2.1. Backwards compatible though, and none of these video cards will even saturate the PCI Express Gen 2 bus at this point, so don't worry as far as speed goes. It's really just sort of a marginal improvement you get going from PCI Gen 2 to PCI Gen 3. So don't worry if you're installing this card in a slightly older system. You should still be good to go. Now, there was some other information I was going to talk about, which I shouldn't forget, and that's with regards to the reference specs as well as overclock specs that we have here. So if you're buying a GTX 670 and you're getting a reference stock version, you're going to get 1,344 CUDA cores. You're going to get a base clock of 915 megahertz and then a boost clock of 980 megahertz. The way boost clock works is it's kind of like turbo boost works on an Intel processor. That is that when the thermal environment of the card, so the temperature of the GPU itself, as well as the components allows, it will actually boost up the GPU base clock, give you a little bit of extra power, a little bit of extra rendering capability for the video games that you're playing. So as long as you're maintaining proper temperatures, you'll get some extra juice out of the card. Now, again, 915 and 980 are the core clock and boost clocks of stock 670. This one is overclocked, so you get a base clock of 967 as compared to 915, and then you get a boost clock of 1046, and then actually effectively, as I was benchmarking this, I saw the boost clock go up to and maintain 1150 megahertz. So definitely a lot of extra juice out of there going with the boost clock. Now that did correspond with a rise in temperature. The max temperature I saw from any of the benchmarks I ran was 78 degrees Celsius, which is a little bit on the warmer side, but still well within the threshold of what you want to operate at within most games in a typical computer environment. And I should mention that even at 78 degrees Celsius, the max the fan speed got up to was only 54%. So there's still a little bit of extra air movement that could be had by increasing the fan speed there. But still, you got reasonable temperatures working within that range. Now, with the boost clock and the overclock potential of this, you get a texture fill rate of actually effectively 108.3 gigatexels per second, and that's compared to the reference specs from NVIDIA, which is 102.5 gigatexels per second. That being said, we're going to move into the benchmarks for this video card, so here they are. And that is going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully this will give you guys a better idea of the look and feel of the reference design of the GTX 670 from NVIDIA, as well as the overclock performance of this particular version that we have from MSI, which gives you a bit higher clock speeds right out of the box. I'm Paul with Newegg TV, and if you enjoyed today's video, please head over to our Newegg YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more tech videos. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.